This is Diesel Talk.
Episode 5 of Diesel Talk. We have 3 questions today. One is a Huey troubleshooting code question. We'll be discussing that, and it's one I get a lot of. Second question has to do with a truck that is shutting down on an owner-operator, and they would like to know what potentially could it be. And the third question is kind of a more mechanics question. It's talking about flex head ratchets. And hope you guys enjoy the video. So Omar asks, is the sensor located on top of the Huey pump the IAP sensor? So here we are looking at a C7 Huey pump. My finger's pointing at the top of the Huey pump. And the 2-wire connector coming out of that is what he's talking about. That one right there. Now that is not the injection actuation pressure sensor. That is actually the driver circuit or solenoid circuit for the Huey pump. Now, what does that do? I'm going to show you a video here. This is an injection actuation pressure test. And watch the green line, that number. It's going to increase as I step up the pressure because the ECM controls the amount of current that goes to that solenoid, and as the current increases, so does the pressure. So that's what that wiring is for. It's not a sensor, it's actually a driver circuit inside the Huey pump. And I get that question a lot. So we're looking at that again. So where is the injection actuation pressure sensor? Well, you can still see it. It's right there. It's actually threaded into the cylinder head itself. And where it's threaded in, that's the Huey oil rail. So that's under pressure while it's running. So if you have an issue with that sensor, that is where it is. It's not on the Huey pump. So Grieven asks, hello there, great videos. I have a question. I have a 2000 GMC with a 3126. Starts and runs good for a while, about 30 minutes. Then the engine light comes on, truck loses power and dies. Give it 5 to 10 minutes, starts right up again. Can you help me with that? Alright, so I get questions like this quite commonly. You know, my truck does this, what is it? Or what could it be? Well, an engine that loses power and then dies could be 100 different things. It's impossible to troubleshoot over the internet, basically, without knowing what that check engine light is. So first thing you're going to have to do is, you got to figure out what that check engine light is. You can try, if you look at my troubleshooting CAT engine light codes, if you have a cruise control switch, you can try to do the blink codes and try to find out what the blink code is. And now it's a 3126, so normally engine issues with that are related to the Huey system. Now it could also be, I mean, loses power then dies. That could be a lot of things. It could be fuel related, it could be electrical, it could be the Huey system. You know, the engine could be losing the timing sensors. Who knows? You really got to figure out what that check engine light is. But we'll discuss common failures with that engine. So check engine light comes on. Most medium duty CAT truck engines don't have fuel pressure sensors. So if he was losing fuel pressure, it probably wouldn't throw a check engine light because the engine doesn't know what the fuel pressure is. So he's throwing a check engine light. So it's probably Huey related, especially that it dies and then it starts back up again. So my guess would be, let's assume that it's a Huey related issue, and it's you know, it's getting hot and you get a leak or your driver starts to fail. Then you turn it off, it cools down, fire it back up, does the same thing. If that's the case, and let's say you have Huey codes, you're going to have to pull the valve cover, crank the engine after it's hot, see if you have an oil leak anywhere under the injectors. If you do, then you have to either reseal the leaky injector, or if it's the injector itself, you'll have to replace it. Now, if it's something current related with the Huey pump, well, then you're probably going to have to change the Huey pump. Now, on a 3126, you can actually change just the driver itself. I want to say it's about $200, and you're most likely it's the Huey pump itself and not the driver. But you might get lucky and it might be the driver itself, which is $200, as opposed to a Huey pump, which is closer to $1,000. Those are really the common failures on a 3126, are Huey related. But don't start troubleshooting that Huey system until you find out what the check engine light is, because you might have, like I said, you might have something wrong with the fuel system, you might have something wrong with the ECM or the wiring. You know that ECMs get hot sometimes and they'll shut you down. So really, first thing to do is, before you troubleshoot anything, is you got to find out what the check engine light is. All right, it's a good question. So Andy asks, what do you find yourself using more of, a fixed head or flex head ratchet? Ordering a snap-on ratchet, but I'm stuck whether to get a fixed or flexed head ratchet. Would you say a flexed head are as durable as a fixed head ratchet is? So here is a picture of my collection of ratchets at work. So starting from the left, we have a stubby snap-on 3/8 drive flex head ratchet. We have a stubby 3/8 drive Matco flex head ratchet. Cornwell non-flex head ratchet. We have a flex head breaker bar. Then I have a flex head long 3/8 drive Matco ratchet. And then the two end ones are a 17-inch half-inch drive flex head ratchet and a 24-inch flex head half-inch drive ratchet. So I like flex head ratchets. You're gonna get a lot more use out of them than you will a non-flex head ratchet. Even my torque wrenches are flex head, and it's even getting harder to find the standard ratchets because most guys prefer the flex head ones. Now, why do guys prefer the flex head ones more than the straight ones? Well, versatility. These aren't 1920s cars. There's a lot of places where a standard non-flex head ratchet, it's not going to fit. You need something that articulates to get around brackets, get in weird places. Now on the stubby ones, I would say you don't really need the locking headed ones as much because you're not usually pushing and driving with a stubby. Usually you can grab the head and do that. But on the longer ones, I'd say if you're going to get one, try to get the locking head ones. And the reason for that is if you say you have a long half-inch drive flex head ratchet, but it's not a locking one, well, when you're trying to move your socket or put it on something and push with it, that head is going to move on you when you're trying to drive with it. So definitely get a locking one the longer the ratchet gets, but on the stubby ones, you don't need one. In fact, it'll get in the way more because usually the lock button, if you're using a stubby, it's because it's usually in a place that's hard to access. So I would say don't get a locking head one if it's a stubby. Get a locking head one if it's a longer ratchet. But also you might want to get one flex head ratchet, like my Cornwell one. I use that quite a bit. And the reason for that is, sometimes you're pushing with a ratchet handle on a nut or a fastener. And the flex head, even if it's a locking one, it's going to move a little bit. So sometimes it's nice to have a stable way to push. I guess it's hard to say without showing you a video of it. But it's nice to have both. But I'd say if you're going to get a non-flexing head one, don't get a real long one. You'll wind up typically not using that long one as much because you won't be able to get it in as many places. Now the strength of the pins on the flex head. I've never broken one. Now I've put some torque on them, and I've never broken one. They're really strong. Not only that, if you get a Matco or Snap-on, Cornwell, whatever, they're warranted. So if you do break it, you can get a new pin for it, and it's covered. But I've never broken one. Now I've worn a lot of the heads out. The ratcheting mechanisms, they've worn out quite a bit. Especially on my older Matco ones that were like the 36 tooth. I think I've put 3 or 4 heads in that one. But it uses the same ratchet mechanism as the fixed head one. So really ratchets, the ratcheting mechanism is going to wear out more so than the locking pin will. Now if, say you're trying to break head bolts loose with a 3/8 ratchet, you should be using the right one, Now you can damage the pins if you're over torquing with it, but as long as you use it for its intended purposes, the pins are very strong and you shouldn't really have many issues with them. Alright, that was a good question. And thank you for watching this episode of Diesel Talk.